All right. Good afternoon. Can you hear me in the room? Wave your arm if you can hear me. Awesome. That's great. We'll get started then. Happy Friday. First, we have an update on the Democratic Republic of the Congo following the eruption of the Nyiragongo Volcano. Our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that about 400,000 people are potentially affected by the state evacuation order of 10 districts in Goma, issued amid fears of a new eruption. Thousands of people are now displaced and on the move. They're heading towards Sake, west of Goma, Rubavu in Rwanda, and Rutshuru in the north. People are also crossing Lake Kivu to reach Bukavu in the province of South Kivu. Tremors are continuing today. Yesterday, one of them measured at 4.9 on the Richter scale. Initially, humanitarian assistance focused on people directly affected by the volcanic eruption, as well as on neighborhoods in Goma without access to water. But with mass displacement, the focus is widening. New assessments will take place today in Sake, Rutshuru, and other areas to where people have moved. Water, sanitation, and disease outbreak prevention are among the priorities. For its part, the UN peacekeeping mission in the country continues to provide support to the authorities. Priorities for support include the rehabilitation of roads leading to Goma and repairs of the water system damaged by the eruption and seismic episodes. The mission continues to conduct helicopter and drone flights to identify possible fissures or vents of the lava outflow in Goma. Peacekeepers have also provided water to displaced people in Sake. The mission reports that it has completed the first major temporary relocation of non-critical personnel from Goma to several locations, in particular to Bukavu and Sake. Critical personnel and assets remain in Goma to support the authorities and the response. As we mentioned earlier this week, more than 30 people have died in the volcano's eruption. The UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, was in Muscat yesterday. He met with Mohammed Abdel Salam, the chief negotiator of Ansar Allah. He also met with senior Omani officials. He discussed the UN plan to open Sana'a airport and lift restrictions on Hodeidah ports to enhance the freedom of movement of people and commodities to and from Yemen, achieve a nationwide ceasefire, and to the parties to the relaunch of a political process to end the conflict. Mr. Griffith said that his recent meetings, as well as the continued international and regional support, show that the parties could still seize this opportunity and make a breakthrough towards resolving the conflict. The United Nations interim force in Lebanon today handed over one of its positions to the Lebanese Armed Forces, its strategic partner, at a ceremony in southwestern Lebanon. The UNIFIL force commander, Major General Stefano Del Col, handed over UN position 2-45A to Brigadier General Maroun Kobayati. Today's handover is part of the continued UNIFIL support for the Lebanese army's deployment throughout the south, which is critical for the extension of the government's authority in the area. Jan Kubish, the special envoy for Libya, said yesterday at the closure of the virtual meeting of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum that a majority of delegates had expressed the need to end the transitional phase with the holding of elections on the 24th of December. He says he intends to forward to the House of Representatives and to the High Council of State the basis and outcome of the forum's deliberations. He will do so without delay with the clear request that they clarify the constitutional basis and legislation for elections, ideally by the 15th to the 20th of June. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, is calling for greater support from the international community for Afghanistan's people, including those displaced within its borders and refugees seeking safety outside the country. The appeal comes at the end of a 4-day visit by UNHCR's Assistant High Commissioner for Operations, Rauf Mazou. He raised concerns about the continued violence, which has been causing new displacement. So far, in 2021, more than 100,000 Afghans have been internally displaced due to conflict. UNHCR has assisted more than 100,000 internally displaced Afghans in the last 6 months through the distribution of hygiene kits, emergency shelter kits, family tents, sanitary kits, and other non-food items. Cash assistance has also been provided to vulnerable individuals, such as the elderly, children and women at risk, people with disabilities, and those with serious medical conditions. While the international community has made immense contributions during the last 20 years, aid and funding for Afghanistan have been on the decline. UNHCR's financial appeal of $123.5 million for 2021 is only 24% funded. Turning to Tigray in Ethiopia, The UN Refugee Agency today said that it has received disturbing reports of soldiers entering a number of temporary accommodations for the displaced in Shire and taking away several hundreds of youths, internally displaced Ethiopians who'd been sheltering there. UNHCR said that the situation was dramatic and distressing, not only for the relatives of the missing, but for all the displaced in Shire. The UN Refugee Agency stressed that it was critical that all combatants recognize the humanitarian character and sanctity of the displacement sites in Shire and elsewhere. On Myanmar, our team on the ground tells us that more than 121,000 people have been internally displaced due to armed conflict and insecurity in parts of the country since the start of 2021. The majority of this displacement has taken place after the 1st of February, when the military seized control over the government. Earlier this week, some 37,000 people were displaced in Kaya State in southeastern Myanmar, following a new wave of clashes between the Myanmar Armed Forces and the Karenni Army, as well as the Karenni People's Defense Force. Thousands more were uprooted in the past few weeks in northern parts of Shan State due to clashes between the Tatmadaw and ethnic armed organizations, as well as fighting among ethnic armed organizations. Thousands of people have also fled their homes in southeastern areas of Chin State since last week. Our colleagues in the country team say that the humanitarian needs stemming from new displacement compounds the needs of the 1 million people who've been identified as requiring aid at the start of this year. Our colleagues reiterate their call on all parties to ensure safe and unimpeded humanitarian access to the UN and our partners. In Brazil, the UN team, led by resident coordinator Sylvia Rux, continues to provide support to state and municipal authorities in their ongoing response to the COVID-19 pandemic. After 4 months of the immunization campaign, 39% of people over the age of 60 have been fully vaccinated in the country. This represents 11.7 million people. To boost treatment capacities, the UN Population Fund delivered oxygen production equipment for a maternity ward in the northern part of Brazil. For its part, the UN Office for Project Services contributed to the procurement of 60 extra beds for a hospital in the southern state of Santa Catarina. The International Organization for Migration provided COVID-19 testing support and provided medical care to nearly 500 people in the northwestern states of Roraima and Amazonas. The UN Development Program partnered with the National Justice Council to reduce overcrowding and the risk of a COVID-19 outbreak across the nation's correctional facilities. The International Civil Aviation Organization Council expressed its strong concern at the apparent forced diversion of Orion Air commercial passenger aircraft flying in Belarus airspace on Sunday, the 23rd of May. At a special meeting convened yesterday, the ICAO governing body underlined the importance of establishing the facts of what happened and of understanding whether there had been any breach by any ICAO member state of international aviation law. Recalling Article 55E of the Chicago Convention, the Council decided to undertake a fact-finding investigation of this event. It requested the ICAO Secretariat to prepare an interim report to the Council for a subsequent meeting of the current session, presenting the available facts and relevant legal instruments. And as you know, Monday is Memorial Day in the United States, and the UN will be closed. We will, as always, be available to you via email to answer any questions you may have during that time, and we will be back on Tuesday. And on Tuesday at 3 p.m., Ambassador Sven Jurgensen, the permanent representative of Estonia and president of the Security Council for the month of June, will brief on the Council's program of work for the month. He will brief you from the press briefing room. And Stefan will also be back to brief you from the press briefing room for the noon briefing on Tuesday. And that is it from me. I'll open the floor to questions. First off, I have, I believe, Toby, your hand is raised. You go first, and then there's someone next to you there. Okay, Toby.
Thanks, Farhan. Nice to see you. Did ICAO give a time frame on when they expect this investigation to be, started, finished? What's the time frame?
Well, the idea is that they want to have at least an interim report available during the current session of the ICAO. So that, in other words, they are trying to get that done while the session that's underway is still in progress. Beyond that, in terms of specific facts of the timetable, I'll leave that in the hands of our colleagues at ICAO.
Thanks. Follow-up question on Yemen, please, which is, can you give any more color commentary about the nature of the discussion between Martin Griffiths and the Ansarallah negotiator? Did he feel encouraged? What was the mood?
Well, technically, color commentary is your part of the job. It's not my part of the job. I do want to point out, in terms of what I just read, that Mr. Griffiths, in what he said after he left Oman, is that he did say that his meetings showed that the parties could still seize this opportunity and make a breakthrough towards resolving the conflict. So I will leave it to you to interpret how optimistic that sounds.
Thanks, Farhan. Can I ask one more question from you, please? Which is
one more, and then we'll go over to your colleague on the left.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
My left or right.
Which is on a top U.S. general has said that interpreters in Afghanistan are likely to be evacuated. Is the UN concerned about the safety of that group of people, and are you paying specific attention to that class of professional?
Well, I wouldn't highlight any particular group. You'll have seen what UNHCR said, that we have concerns about a number of groups in Afghanistan, including, of course, the internally displaced in recent months. Obviously, if there is any further unrest on the ground in Afghanistan, and I don't want to speculate on whether that happens or not, it is the responsibility of the international community, after all of the efforts we have put collectively in Afghanistan in recent years, to make sure that the people of Afghanistan will be cared for. And certainly, I think that is a commitment that the United Nations and all involved countries must take seriously. Okay. Yes, you with your hand raised.
Thank you, Farhan. Abdullah Imasi from Al Hura. Farhan, yesterday the UNAMI mission was extended by the Security Council for 1 year. I have two questions. One is, in overall, how do you evaluate the UNAMI role in Iraq since its establishment 18 years ago? And my second question is, Iraq, as you know, is a divided country facing very serious challenges on the ground. There are security and stability issues, upcoming election. Is the UN and its mission in Iraq able to address those challenges?
Well, to answer your second question first, yes, we are able to answer the challenges. The Secretary General has welcomed the extension of the UNAMI mission for a year, and the mission itself is fully committed to providing a strengthened, robust, and visible UN team with additional staff in accordance with the mandate that is given to us by the Security Council. And we will continue to provide assistance to the government of Iraq, including regarding the commitment that we have to ensure the delivery of free, fair, inclusive, and participatory elections. And of course, in terms of the history of the UN over the past 18 years, in some ways, I will leave the evaluation to you. But certainly, those of you who have followed Iraq know the conditions under which the mission was created, know the tremendous problems Iraq had a decade and a half ago. And certainly we've done our best to try to improve conditions on the ground, and we hope that we have achieved that goal. Okay, over to Oscar Bolaños and then to Iftikhar. Oscar first.
Hi, Farhan. It's nice to see you again. And yes, hi. Do you have any readout about the situation, the crisis in Colombia, and all these 30 days of demonstrations and violence in the country?
Well, yes. I mean, yes, we do. What I can tell you is we continue to closely follow developments surrounding the protests in Colombia and to lend support where the UN can be of assistance. The UN team on the ground is continuing to call for respect for the right of peaceful protest, full observance of human rights by the security forces, and a stop to all violence and acts of vandalism. We also continue to urge inclusive and peaceful dialogue in order to arrive at solutions. And I'd like to add that the Secretary General's Special Representative, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, along with the Catholic Church, are acting as guarantors and facilitators of dialogue between the government and the National Strike Committee, with the participation of the head of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Yes, may I follow up, please?
Sure.
Yes, there are reports from the Amnesty International and the Human Rights Watchers of the dozens of people being killed during these demonstrations, the violence, and dozens of people being disappeared and forced disappearance. So on these regards, do you think, or what is your comment about if this violence and 30 days of demonstrations can affect the peace process of verification mission in the country by the UN, which is the sponsor on the peace agreement?
Well, regarding that, like I said, our special representative is on the ground, and Mr. Ruiz Massieu is trying to make sure that the peace process continues to be on track. We'll continue to support the government and people of Colombia wherever we can be of assistance on this. And regarding the reports of human rights violations, I think that also suggests the importance of making sure that any violations are fully investigated.
Thank you, Farhan.
Thank you. And Iftikhar, over to you.
Thank you, Farhan. Following up on Afghanistan, in your opening remarks, you referred to continuing violence and displacement of the people. But what is the development on the diplomatic front? The month of Ramadan had long gone, and still there is no word about the resumption of peace talks between the parties. Any news about that?
Well, yes. I mean, there is. There's no news in terms of being able to announce a date just yet. As you know, it takes a while to establish when a timeline for this could be. However, I can tell you that the personal envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Jean Anno, has been meeting with the permanent representatives to the United Nations in view of the important role of regional countries with regards to a peaceful settlement of the conflict in Afghanistan. So he is continuing with those efforts, and we will do our best now that Ramadan has come and gone to see when we can reschedule these meetings. And if that is it, I will wish you all a very happy holiday weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Bye. Take care.